Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing a story that you might have actually lived through yourself, and trust me, it's a love story. Are you ready? Let's go! She was 62 years old, standing at the edge of a pool in Miami, when she realized the young man beside her was carrying a secret that no one in his entire life had ever been willing to hear. And the moment she finally asked him about it, something inside her that had been silent for years suddenly came back to life in a way she never saw coming. Okay, girls, I have to tell you about this story because I have not been able to stop thinking about it since I first heard it. You know how sometimes you come across something and it just stays with you? That is exactly what happened when I learned about Linda. Linda was 62 years old, and she had spent the last 18 years of her life working as a swimming pool instructor at a community aquatic center in Miami, Florida. She was the kind of woman who showed up every single morning before anyone else, unlocked the doors herself, made sure the water temperature was right, and had everything perfectly in order before the first student arrived. She was dependable, she was professional, and according to everyone who knew her, she was completely at peace with the quiet, predictable life she had built for herself after her divorce. Linda had been divorced for 9 years when this story begins. Her marriage had ended not with a dramatic fight or a devastating betrayal, but with something she described to a close friend as a slow and quiet disappearance. One day, she looked across the dinner table at her husband of 21 years and realized that neither of them had anything left to say to the other. No anger, no tears. Just a silence so deep and so permanent that the only honest thing left to do was to walk away. She kept the small apartment near the water. He moved north. They did not speak again. After the divorce, Linda threw herself into her work. The pool became her whole world. She loved the sound of the water, the smell of chlorine in the morning, the way the light hit the surface at exactly 7 in the morning when she opened up. She loved her students, most of whom were older adults who came to her for gentle exercise and always stayed afterward to chat. Linda was warm and patient, and everybody adored her. But underneath all of that warmth, there was a part of her that had gone very still. A part of her that had simply decided, quietly and without ceremony, that certain things were just not meant for her anymore. Love was one of those things. She was 62. She had lived her life. That chapter was closed, and then Marcus showed up. Marcus was 28 years old when he was hired as the assistant coach at the aquatic center. He came with an impressive background. He had competed at a national level in his early 20s, had coached junior swimmers at 2 different clubs in Florida, and had references that made the center director genuinely excited. When Linda first met him on his opening morning, she shook his hand, showed him around the facility, explained the schedule, and thought to herself that he seemed like a perfectly competent young man. Professional, focused, respectful. She did not think much beyond that, but girls, here's the thing about Marcus that nobody knew at first. And I mean nobody. Marcus was one of the most physically gifted athletes Linda had ever worked alongside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved through the water with the kind of effortless grace that made even experienced swimmers stop and watch. The kids in the junior program worshipped him. The older ladies in the morning aerobics class always seemed to find reasons to ask him questions. He was charming without trying to be, kind without making a production of it, and he had this quiet intensity about him that made you feel like whenever he looked at you, he was actually seeing you. Really seeing you, and yet Marcus ate lunch alone every single day. Linda noticed it after the first week. She noticed it after the second week too. By the third week, she found herself genuinely puzzled. Here was this young man who could walk into any room and immediately make people feel comfortable. And yet every day at noon he would sit by himself at the far end of the break room with a sandwich and his phone and not a single person to talk to. Not because people did not try. They did. But Marcus had this gentle and very practiced way of keeping conversations friendly and completely surface level. He never gave anything real away. He never let anyone actually in. Linda recognized it because she had spent 9 years doing the exact same thing. One afternoon in early October, about 2 months after Marcus had started, Linda stayed late to finish some paperwork. She was the last person in the building, or so she thought, when she walked past the pool and noticed Marcus sitting on the bench near lane 4 with his head in his hands. He was not crying. He was just sitting there in that particular kind of stillness that Linda knew very well, the stillness of someone who has been carrying something heavy for a very long time and has simply run out of the energy to pretend otherwise. She almost kept walking. She told her friend afterward that her first instinct was absolutely to keep walking because it was not her business and she did not want to intrude. But something stopped her. She later said she could not explain it. She just stopped. She sat down on the bench about 3 feet away from him, and she said, "And I love this." She said absolutely nothing. She just sat there. And after about 2 full minutes of silence, Marcus lifted his head and looked at her, and he said, "How do you do it? How do you make peace with being alone?" Linda said the question hit her somewhere so deep that for a moment she forgot to answer. And then she said, "I am not sure I have made peace with it. I think I have just gotten used to it, which is not the same thing at all." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and then he told her. Not everything, not all at once, but he told her enough. He told her that he had spent most of his adult life watching people pull away from him the moment things got close. That there was something about him, something he had carried since he was very young, that seemed to make people uncomfortable once they really got to know him. He had never had a relationship that lasted more than a few months. He had stopped trying to figure out why. He had just accepted somewhere in his mid-20s that some people were meant to move through the world with someone beside them, and some people were meant to move through it alone. He had decided he was the second kind. Linda listened to every single word, and when he finished, she said, "I decided the same thing about myself 9 years ago. And I want you to know that I think we were both wrong. Girls." I got chills when I heard that part. Chills. What happened between Linda and Marcus over the following months was not fast, and it was not dramatic. It was slow and careful and honest in a way that neither of them had experienced before. They started having lunch together, then they started staying after closing to talk. Then they started texting in the evenings, first about work, then about everything else. Marcus told her more about his past. Linda told him about her marriage and the long silence that had followed it. They were extraordinarily careful with each other in the way that people are when they have both been hurt before and are terrified of being hurt again. It was Linda's closest friend who finally said to her, "Honey, I think you have real feelings for this man." And Linda, who had been telling herself for weeks that what she felt was simply a deep and genuine friendship, sat with that for a long time before she finally admitted to herself that her friend was right. The age difference was 34 years. Linda was not unaware of this. She thought about it constantly. She thought about what people would say. She thought about whether it was fair to Marcus, whether she was seeing something that was not really there, whether the whole thing was some kind of strange emotional response to years of loneliness. She turned it over and over in her mind for weeks. And then one evening, Marcus called her and said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to just let me finish before you say anything." And he told her that in all of his 28 years, he had never once felt as genuinely understood by another person as he felt when he was with her. That she was the first person who had ever sat down next to him in his silence without trying to fix it or fill it. That he did not care about the numbers. He cared about what was real, and what was real was that she made him feel, for the first time in his life, like he did not have to carry everything alone. Linda did not say anything for a long time after he finished, and then she said, "I think you just said everything I have been too frightened to say out loud for months. You know, when I first came across Linda's story, I sat with it for a long time before I decided to share it with you all, because I think there is something in it that a lot of us need to hear. We spend so much of our lives deciding in advance what is possible for us. We draw these invisible lines around ourselves and we say, that chapter is closed, that door is shut, I am past the age for that kind of thing. And Linda had done exactly that. 9 years of quiet and stillness and telling herself she was at peace, when really she had just learned to live without expecting anything more. And then a 28-year-old man sat down at the edge of a pool with his head in his hands and changed everything. Not because he was perfect. Not because the situation was simple or easy or without complication, but because two people who had both decided they were meant to be alone looked at each other and decided maybe not. I think the most beautiful thing about this story is not the romance. It is the courage. The courage it took for Marcus to be honest about his loneliness. The courage it took for Linda to sit down on that bench instead of walking past. The courage it took for both of them to say out loud what they had been carrying silently for years. That kind of courage does not have an age limit, and I think that is worth remembering. Girls, if this story moved you even a little bit, I would love for you to leave a comment below and tell me what you thought. Did Linda make the right choice? Would you have had the courage to sit down on that bench? I read every single comment, and I genuinely love hearing from you. And if you know someone who needs to be reminded today that it is never too late to let someone in, please share this with them. It might be exactly what they need to hear. Do not forget to subscribe so you never miss a story, because I have so many more coming your way, and some of them are going to absolutely surprise you. I will see you in the next one.